Good morning, everyone. Morning, Al.
Good morning, Brandon. That was a great introduction.
I agree. Nice video there. Get us all amped for the day and to see what's new in GibbsCAM 2024.
Well, we're excited to be here. It's just kind of a dual scenario. I would say, Brandon, you could probably turn down that volume in the stage now behind you. But we are at Sandvik, Canada, their technical center. Great to be here. Always a beautiful venue. I wish I could show you what's around me, but it's a great classroom. We have a few attendees here, but we have hundreds of you out there. And since we sell across Canada and the world, in some cases, depending on the product, it's great to have you live with us on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So welcome, all of you. I think you'll be able to get this in other translations based on Google doing what it does, or Stephanie in the background later on. So in the meantime, if you have questions on your chat available, I believe on YouTube for sure, you'll be able to type in some questions, and we'd love to attend to those a little bit later or as we go through the presentation. But the idea today is to get you through GibbsCAM 2024. Now, you are all invited, whether you're on maintenance or off maintenance, we don't care. You're a GibbsCAM customer. And even if you're not a GibbsCAM customer, you may want to learn about Gibbs, and this is certainly the easiest way to see us live and or catch us afterward whenever you're ready. The only thing you're missing is our beautiful French pastries. But other than that, you hopefully have something close that you can grab a coffee or a pastry where you're at. So Brandon is going to drive this session. I'll be around, and I think our audio will be on, but our video will be off, so you can see the whole screen and see what's happening in with GibbsCAM. So I think at this point, Brandon, we're probably ready to get started. GibbsCAM 2024 was released about 3 weeks ago. We may be one of the first rollouts. I think Michael Baggy did one yesterday, potentially in Sweden. But yeah, we're certainly one of the first. And I hope, again, this being live, you'll be able to watch it anytime you want, or if there's a point of interest that you need to get back to, you know where to find it. All right, Brandon, let it roll.
Thanks a lot, Al. So I am going to leave us on in the background. I'll leave Wally on as well, but I'll share my screen. All right, so should be able to see GibbsCAM now. And obviously, like Al said, Gibbs 2024 came out on October 23rd, I believe it was. So obviously a slew of new additions that they've added. And so let's get started. Now I'm going to start by talking about one thing first, and it has to do with the network license option, because they have changed it in this version. So GibbsCAM 2023 used the SimLM, or the Cimatron License Manager, which it did since, I think, GibbsCAM 13. So they have swapped back to the Reprise License Manager again. And I thought it would be important to note some things, because we're getting quite a few calls about it. Just nothing bad, just people swapping back over, getting things running. And one thing seems to come up a lot, which is when you install the license manager, you have to log in to the embedded web server and change your password, or else it will shut down after 10 minutes. And, if you glaze over the documentation, you might not catch that on the Reprise side. So all you have to do is just go to, on the server, your web browser, you can go to http://localhost:5054, and that should bring you to a dashboard. And that is, if you've been using the SIM service monitor, it's kind of its equivalent. So you can start the server, restart, as well as change your password. As soon as you get in there, you should see it right along the left-hand bar. So just thought that was important to note that it has changed. It only affects network license users, but obviously there are a lot of you out there, so expect that that'll take, an extra setup. But as of now, the two license managers do live together, so you can run both, and we'll see how that goes down the line. And most of the things are same when it has to do with things like virtual machines and that sort of thing.
I think Brendan too will have at the end of the presentation some PDFs and so forth available, because this particular item is hot on people's lists, and if Gibbs is not launching for you, we want to make sure that gets sorted. So we'll put those things up with a link on YouTube and the other applications as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have the Gibbs installation one here. There's also a Reprise one that's built into when you go to the web server, you can see it there. I believe, Dave, we were just setting yours up yesterday or the day before, so it worked, eh? It's still going? Okay. So yeah, not a panic at all, just making sure everyone knows kind of what to do. But it does follow very much the same steps of installing it on the server, running the registration tool. So it's really just that changing the password thing that is catching people off guard. So as long as you do that successfully, you should be able to register your clients and get things going on. I'm just going to double check. Looks like everything, no complaints. So I think everyone's hearing me okay. So now on to the actual additions to GibbsCAM, and then we'll show a couple of our own things as well at the end. So I'll start here with one that is very simple, but I find it's going to be really useful, especially with the next thing I show you as well, which is the virtual points that people are liking. But it just has to do with edges. And the fact that up to now, Gibbs, when you have edge selection on and you're looking to extract an edge, let's say, you see all of the edges. And it doesn't matter if they're behind the model, if they're in your view. So I'm sure there's plenty of people out there with incredibly complex solids, and it's very hard to catch the edge sometimes. You're rotating it certain ways, trying to grabbing one and then catching another, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what they've done is they've added a visible edge selection button that just drops down right beside the usual edge selection so that you can pick which one you want to use. So you can still use the regular one, but if you go to the visible edge selection, then obviously any edges that you don't have in front of you that are hidden will not be shown. And this is just an example. I've seen worse than this model, of course. But now I can pick my edges and extract without having to fight with all the edges that I don't necessarily care about at that angle. So I like that a lot. And again, the next thing that I show you, it comes up as well and makes that a little less painful. So again, just drop down the little down arrow beside the edge selection, pick the upper one, and that will be visible edge selection. And then it will remain just like the others, like the slicer modes and the other things. When you turn it off and on, it'll use that one. So I think that one's, again, simple, but going to be very useful. And then combined with this addition, which is totally new, and they're calling it virtual points. And if you've ever, been using some of the translate functions or the modify functions here, transform, if you're ever trying to interrogate data, usually you have to make some kind of a piece of geometry. Maybe you're trying to dimension some things. Holes come up a lot between center. I would have to go into the geometry palette. I would have to make points on the center of the holes, let's say, on the middle of the lines. No option for the stock. You would have to know the size and input the point. So now what they've added is the virtual points, which show up when you hold either Alt for doing Alt interrogation, or when you're doing the Alt-Shift, of course, to populate everything. So if I bring up 2D Rotate, for example, if I just hold Alt or Alt-Shift and I start hovering around, you can see how it's picking up not only the center point of the circles, but the quadrants here, the center of lines. You can see it picking up the corners of the stock, the centers of the stock, even where the CS here is intersecting the stock. Surfaces and solids need the edges selected or turned on, so that's why I was mentioning it's useful to have the hidden edge selection, because you get quite a few points when you have them all showing. But that works in tandem where I can just turn that visible edge selection on, and now I'm getting a nice clean selection of points. You can see the rads have a bunch of points. So those guys, the main purpose is to be interrogated. So if I go ahead and do the usual Alt interrogation, you can see it loading in the actual position of those points without having to make one. Which for these guys, you might have to do a point on arc, center point. There's a lot of geometry tools for that, but this is going to save so much time. I've already been using it quite a bit. So if I want to rotate this line, let's say, I would just pick that guy. I can put in the rest of my details, pick the line, and do it. And same with absolute translate. I'm using that with the solids a lot now. No need to extract an edge. Very useful for sure. And a secondary function of those is that you can add dimensions to them. So if you've ever wanted to throw a quick dimension, maybe find out where a point is and have it for a setup sheet of some sort, or just put dimensions on your whole model, as long as I'm using the dimensioning palette, you can see I don't have to actually hold Alt at all. I'm not holding anything. All of the regular things are the same, so I would have to hold Control, of course, to get a preview. And I could also click to lay the dimension down. And there you can see one that hasn't been very easy to do up to now, which is the circle to circle or hold to hole on center. You couldn't do that on the model at all, right? You would have to actually have those circles and those points on there still, and just turn off your geometry or something if you wanted a pretty picture. Same with the point dimension, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this one's going to be huge. They were joking about it at the reseller meeting that it's the one that the developers couldn't live without when they were going back to the old version. So yeah, there's some exciting stuff there, I find. It works on any edges, any geometry. And Al asked a good one. If you were watching the preview for this, Al asked if you could extract the point, and I couldn't find any other way other than coming in and doing an explicit point and using the old edge extract or the Alt interrogation. And that would obviously put the position of the point, and then you could create the point. But I wouldn't really be surprised if that comes up in another version someday. Not much else to say about that, so I'll close her up. And feel free, Al, anytime if you have anything to say, just chime in there. So the next two that I'll show you are more of a passive change, but another one that's useful for sure. It's come up for myself, absolutely, where when you're using ramp down. So anyone that doesn't know what ramp down is, when you're using a contour, you can turn on ramp down, and it turns this Z step into a pitch. So it will constantly helix around whatever shape you're selecting. And it worked great on 2D already, but with solids, this toolpath comes from GibbsCAM 2023. And you can see it just did lead-offs and lead-ons whenever it did the full round. So it wasn't quite there yet. And you'll be able to see it here in the sim. But now they've changed it so you don't have to do anything different. You just turn it on, and now it will come in and actually do the full helix as if it was a 2D shape. So here it is without. Coming around, you can see it leading it out off and on in that corner. And now that I'm in 2024, if I go ahead and redo that toolpath, and again, this is solid based, so it always worked on 2D, but now it's all fixed up, so it should go all the way down and also go past the part. So there's no issue extending the model at all. You could just put whatever depth you want, it'll go past the part and finish off the helix. Meanwhile, taking that last sliver away to create a flat bottom.
And Brandon, that's a good point. Some people don't realize, they don't have to go all the way around the part. It could be just a segment. It could be an air wall in the middle, and they want to avoid that.
Could absolutely. Yeah. If you have an air wall, a lot of toolpaths will avoid cutting that. Yeah. Lots of little fake outs too, I see with roughing, where you could have maybe two regular walls and two air walls, and throw a roughing in there with a big step over to get a couple finish contours. So definitely handy. And that's a good way to finish things. Obviously, you have the helix bore in the holes process, but when you're dealing with anything that's not circular, then contour and ramp down is usually the first one I go to. Nice and simple to set up. There are other options and other processes, but real nice way to finish there. So again, a passive change, and the next one is also a passive change. So it just requires you to do the same thing as usual, and now it works a little better than it did. And this one's going to be the contour when it's combined with a roughing operation or roughing process in the same.
Hey, Brando?
Yes.
Maybe if you change your resolution just a little bit smaller.
Okay.
I think some of the comments on YouTube at the moment, they're saying they're not seeing all the palettes. So it might be just that the resolution is a little out.
What are you thinking?
Let's try that. Yeah, let's try that and see if, because I guess the very extremities, they weren't seeing that.
I wonder too, because we were showing the entire screen before, so I could always switch to that too. It should be live as well if you wanted to take a look and see if it looks good. Because yeah, some of them will be coming up using the two sides there.
Let's run with that for now.
Perfect. So this guy here, like I was saying, this one is a roughing and then a contour. And the contour has material only on. So it should realize that there's no material in certain places and not put a contour there. But in previous versions, it had, a different behavior, let's say. So I believe even if you had the roughing having no stock, it would still create the contour. So here you can see it from 2023, and it's making that contour all the way around. And again, if I just recalculate it, it's nothing you have to do other than the usual thing, but it should pick up different materials there. And if I didn't have any kind of a material left from the roughing, then that contour wouldn't do anything at all. It would just disappear. So I'm not sure. I'm not smart enough to know how they do it in the background, but I believe one of them feeds off the other, kind of like the pre-milling, sees that it's in the same stack. So another one that obviously cutting air doesn't make a lot of money, so not bad at all. Actually, I closed that one a little early. So the next one here, it's more on the tool side. So I'll just show you in this file here. But they've actually added cutting data to the tools. So if you're using the material database and you're getting your feeds and speeds from that, inside the tool itself now, you have the cutting data that you can add. So I can open this guy up, and I have a nice little list. And I can just say, hey, put something in there if I wanted to enter a name, surface footage there, and inch per tooth, inch per rev, work each other out. I could add as many as I want in here, or on the process side as well. And they will
Brandon,
be,
we're going to be talking about a little bit about CoroPlus, but CoroPlus populates that for you automatically, doesn't it?
there is no direct population, I don't think yet, but I know that they'd like to have that happen. Yes.
Yeah, because I think from their library, we can bring in the tool, but I thought it brought in the feeds and speeds. Is that not in the current version?
I'll have to test that. Todd, do you have any idea?
I haven't tested the cutting speeds, but I have tested the tooling.
Yeah.
It seems to be working pretty good with the lathe and mill, but
It
right now for
No worries. No, I was under the impression the last time I checked anyways, the feed and speed calculator on the CoroPlus side was really good, but I did have to carry it over to the tool. So that might have changed now.
I just got a note saying that in this edition, it's not there. You can reference it, but it doesn't come into Gibbs. But in the next version, I guess it will be available.
I wouldn't be surprised if they get that going. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because just streamline the process right in, right through, saves with the tool as well. And that passes it down to the process. So whether it's you adding it right now or before and saving it, or CoroPlus in the future adding it, then you would run into something like this where your tool would have some kind of a feed and speed calculation, and that would be tied to the tool. And then when you make a process, you get those feeds and speeds, or the cutting data to create the feeds and speeds in here. And you can also add it on this side, so you can add it, it saves with the process as well, or just with the tool. And then you would just pick in here and you can calculate those guys.
Is that why that check mark's there?
That's why that check mark, you got it. Just to let you know that, hey,
Yeah.
It's a smart tool, let's say.
Of course, you can override that anyway, right? So it's not like you're tied to it forever.
Anytime you can come in here and change those numbers. They're just the regular numbers. So it's almost like using the regular. You can see that these buttons still look at the machining database or the material database.
Wonderful.
So yeah, if they're coming in from CoroPlus later, that would be great. And maybe from some other sources. Yeah, I'm sure they'll build.
Tool Manager IQ, right?
Exactly what I was thinking. Yes. I don't want to put words in Wally's mouth, but yes, Tool Manager IQ would be good to have that as well.
Yeah, so that'll come in that way as well. And then, of course, if you change the feeds and speeds in the process, it overrides that process for whatever reason you might want it to. But the database will still stay the same unless you change it there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, if you just, maybe you're running it and it's a little bit, could be fine-tuned, you can change it up and then update them if you want, or not if you don't want. So definitely. You're still in ultimate control.
Wally is just so you know, he's monitoring the YouTube chat. So guys who are live or watching us live, if you have questions, type away and we'll get to those questions at the end or as we go through it.
Yes, and is he happier with this aspect ratio here?
Yeah, apparently the aspect ratio was not too much of a problem. It depends if you're LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube. They're slightly different, but some of the dialogues apparently are kind of gray. But anyway, we're good. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep it like that. Yeah.
We'll probably be using this in the future. And yes, this is our first go at it other than our little test, but let me know. I can always share the whole screen if needed.
I think every platform is different. So I think YouTube is probably the better place to be, but hard to say. LinkedIn also does a good job with it.
Yeah. Yeah. The test one looked okay.
Yeah.
So the next is to do with milling form tools. And I believe I put in some support for this exact issue before. So I'm sure it came up for plenty of people. And I'm using a Sandvik form tool here. So you can see that it's got a form to it, of course. And the problem with that is in the previous versions, depending on the depth that you were cutting, it offsets, just like when you create a chamfer, let's say. When you put a depth, it offsets automatically. So something like this would end up overcutting what you want to cut. So because it's riding on perhaps this or this, there's a very small area here where it would actually cut the correct on the correct diameter. So I have that showing here. And that's obviously a problem, because then you have to maybe figure out what kind of offset that you have to use here to make that better. So if I just run this a little bit, you can see that it's actually cutting too much, and it's because it's riding on that portion of the tool. Let's slow it down here. So at some point, and we'll play that game. You can see it there riding on that. It could be a shank, it could be whatever it's neck down. So that's an issue that they've solved now inside the form tool. So you still have the legacy behavior here if you'd like, and that's fine. But if I go in this form tool here, and I might just do it in this little stubby that I've created as well, because it's a little easier to see the diagram. So I'm going off the real profile right now, which is the legacy behavior. But now you have a couple of other options. And the first one is the monotonic profile, and that's going to respect the nose of the tool, but it will not allow any kind of undercutting. So this little kind of purplyish blue is kind of showing you what the tool will think of it as when you're putting it onto some kind of a geometry or a solid. Or it's actually just on geometry, I believe, but you can see that this would not cut the way that it is right now. And then the other one is the nominal parameters, which you could actually add a virtual corner radius. And I've seen that defined on certain websites as well, that you may want to run it as, as if it has like a bull nose. But in the end, it will still show the form tool. So if I put that fix on the tool I'm using in that tool path there, let's say I do the monotonic profile, that would allow me to still use the tip if I wanted to use it. Perhaps it was some kind of a chamfering or something else that I was using. But if I'm cutting something like I have on my screen right now, and I just come in here and I can redo it, and you can see it grow. And that will respect that 1 inch, in this case, diameter all the way up that neck, so that we end up with the exact profile that we're looking for.
Now, what's interesting, Brandon, is, when Gibbs came out with form tools years ago, we were one of the only ones who actually showed the form tool as it existed. Most of the competitors just showed that monotonic, that cylinder. So you really never got the resultant you were looking for. So it's a really powerful thing. And now, obviously, they've added monotonic support, but we were way ahead of the curve just by giving people the form tool they wanted to see.
Absolutely. And I thought it was interesting too. You notice that it's not a spun body. So yeah. I'm going to report that. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be happening, or, in the previous versions, this would just be more of a spun body look, but that'd be kind of neat to be able to change that too. I've always wanted to make even pictures that way, and be able to see the tool as it would be, as if it was a still image of it, it's spinning, but not spinning at that time, of course. But yeah, definitely a nice addition there. I know a couple of customers that'll be happy with that one. So the next example is going to be the new cutoff process. So they have added a process just to make it easier on the mill to cut anything off, whether it's on the lathe or a 4-axis mill of some sort. You can use a woodruff cutter to cut from, let's say, the face, or you can cut cross with a end mill. This is a lathe in this example, but it can be changed to anything you want. So I have a end mill here, and I have a woodruff cutter or a keyway cutter, whatever you want to call it. And I've combined it with the mill cutoff process here. And it's just literally just like a part off tool. It's coming in, and I've selected the spiral in this case. So you just come in, you choose whether you want to use an end mill. In this case, I'll go to the saw slot mill was what I was trying to think of too. And just about telling it where to start, what position to cut. I'm on a spiral, so I have a center to the spiral and how much of a pitch or a depth per rev and what direction, how deep I want to go. I've been playing around with it, and you could even make grooves this way as well. And you also have an option to do either just a single cut right through, which is probably easy to do other ways anyways, or a couple cuts to meet in the middle and either go the same direction or back and forth. And obviously using that rotary axis as it goes. And I have the same thing. I'll show you one at a time here, but the same kind of deal here with the slot mill, but this is obviously coming in towards the face and doing that undercut to usually part off, I would say, just to cut it off whenever you need to. And that's another tool path. I mean, we've used it. I think it was in one of our demos too, that we had to do it a different way with roughing and material only. So let me show you it in action here. And this is from we haven't done a rollout in a while, but they've added the show skip ops, which is going to show you anything when you're doing the skip unselected ops here. So I'm going to turn that off so that I don't see what happened in the first one when I run the second one. And if you guys are having any slowdowns, I find in really intense parts, if you have that on, it might take a while to render. So keep that in mind if that's happening.
Well, that's an important part. We get a lot of questions about that.
Yes. Yeah, technically from another rollout, but yeah, definitely want to mention that.
Yeah.
And there you can see, I didn't put a fancy machine sim on this one, but just doing a spiral in this case, or we'll do a cut and a cut until it's parted off. But you can control the depths as well, so it doesn't have to go all the way through.
And that tool path is on center.
What's,
that tool path is on center.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can change that too. And then here's the same kind of thing with the
Woodruff
key cutter or whatever you want to call it, the slotting cutter.
Yeah.
Jumped in a little quick there. So yeah, brand new process. It does what it does, and hopefully it'll get a bunch of use.
Yeah, that might be handy in a situation where your turret doesn't have a lot of tools and you don't have a part-off tool, but you do have an end mill that you're using in the past. So that's where, it would be handy if you don't have a lot of tools.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. And again, too, you can do it on the milling side. So I could see people that would use this guy that are doing it a different way now. I feel like it's not supposed to work, but I've seen people jimmy with the rotary milling as well on a slant. So, yeah, definitely going to be some users out there for sure. So this next one is kind of a quick one. It has to do with the part orientation. I'm using the same setup here. It also works on the mill where they've added in the document control an orientation. So whether you're flipping the part around, or in this case, it's changing the C-axis angle. In this case, I have that same toolpath from the last file. And if I take a look at the angles that it's using right now, you can see I have a angle of minus 90 here that it's starting at, and it's moving around. So essentially this will change your C0 and leave all your tool paths alone. So it's starting at negative 90 and coming around. So for any reason that you need, if you want to change that behavior and you already have your part programmed, now you can come in here and you can put that in here.
That's a great feature.
So should be a 90 or a negative. Now you can see it's starting at C0 for that guy and coming around, and
Yeah.
so just about entering a number, but on the code side, it's definitely very, very handy. And on the mill side, it's more of a aligning what your H and V are. And I shouldn't do that right now, but I'll drop it down and just show you what I mean. See if it behaves. So here it is here, where this one's actually using the opposite, because of the way it is. But I could put a standard mill, let's say, would have the H vector being X and the Y vector or the V vector being Y. So you would just put ones in there, and you can split them as well. There's different ways to do it. So if you're ever wondering what that button is, you may not necessarily need to use it, but it's another one of those ones, kind of like these guys. I get a lot of questions still about these guys, and it helps just to know what it is, even if you don't end up using it. So definitely useful. I agree, though. So this next one has to do with intermediate tooling. So anyone that's been playing around with the tooling side of things, this will be very similar. Basically, intermediate tooling, if you're dealing with tool blocks, which could be anything from a basic, just a holder, some kind of a tool block on a lathe turret that holds one tool, maybe gang tooling, possibly a U-axis boring head. See a lot of right angle heads or adjustable angle heads. So all of those guys are supported currently and in the older versions. Y-axis part off as well. Thank you to Sandvik. All of those are supported in the tool block library, and you can have different backends and front ends, kind of attachment nodes that you can set. And so they've added that now into the fixture side of things. So if you're using any kind of modular fixturing, then you can load each piece into the fixture library and then build them the way that you want. And they just have an attachment on one end and an attachment on the other. And so I'm going to build one for you here. I have a part in here already. I'm going to go into the document control dialog here. And I will go into the intermediate tooling tab. I've already added the tool blocks, and I can give you an idea of how that's done as well. But I'm going to add pretty much, this machine has certain nodes that I can attach the fixtures to. And in this case, it has a table. So generally the attachment node will be right on center of the table and on the top of it. So if I double click that there, here are just some, pretty standard 5-axis vices, let's call it, and very modular. You may have one piece or 2, 3, 5. You're building it up, whatever you need at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and build this whole thing. So I'll start with the base. So I'm going to attach the base to the table just by clicking on it here. And you can see you can add an offset if you allow it when you're setting up the fixtures. So if you wanted it off the center of the table, you can use those offsets to move it around. And as you build it, you can also show it in the workspace. So you can see it building, and it's on top of the part right now, but that'll change.
That'll be handy.
Yeah, definitely not the way I'd machine the part. But that guy is now, the attachment is on the table, and now it has an attachment for something else to attach to it, and that's called a receptor. So those receptors can be defined. I kind of left them up. The fitting is the other end of things. But if you had a whole bunch of these things, then you could say that, okay, this is a certain type of fitting, and only tool blocks with receptors of that type would be able to go together with it. But, all these guys go together. I could, I guess, define one, for the spacing and that kind of thing, but maybe I'll put a riser on there now. You can see it's building it up as I go. Same options there. If I wanted both risers together or just one riser. And it's just adding one to the other. And you can have multiple receptors on a single one, and that's how you do the gang tooling on the tool block side. So keep those tool blocks in your head too if you've never seen them before. You can see it starting to build this guy here. And then my last thing that I'm going to add on top would be useful to have a vise. So my vise is this guy here, but I've also added some linear axes. So you can add linear axes, you can add rotary axes to these things. And that's how you do things like U-axis boring and the adjustable angle heads also in the tool block side. So my jaws are shut right now, but I can go ahead and just define what I want that jaw to be at. And I've reversed the direction for each of them. So I know this part is going to be 4 inches total. So I'm just going to put them both at 2, and you can see that one moved. And this one as well. So that fixturing, I'm good with it. Everything's seeming maybe the way that I want it at that point. So I can shut this thing down. And that vise also has a receptor. So what I can do is any of the receptors, I can come into the workspace and I can say, put the piece onto that receptor. And then it just works from there, just like the usual tool blocks would, or the setup would with the part offset. So it's keeping this into consideration. If you loaded this in, you would have to have the Z value for all those things in there. But since that's taken care of, I know this is 4 inches, again, just using round numbers to make it easy. So I could say that's up 4 inches in Z, possibly shift it around however I want with the different offsets. And you end up with your fixture with your part in it. And hopefully looks pretty good. And very easy to go back and just say, hey, remove that one. Oh, that's too much. Let's remove that one, see how it looks at that point, until you're happy with what you have. And there you can see right on center of the table, and again, could be moved around. So
that's an interesting thing there, Brandon. A lot of people have issues with intermediate tooling. So I think that's a point that we need to focus in on some training sometimes with some customers. But it's a very powerful tool for visualization. Runs separate to machine sim, and certainly inside a tool manager, you can save your fixtures also. There's a lot of different ways to manage intermediate tools. So I think we may have a podcast specifically on that later.
Yeah, and I have no kind of a look into the development, but I know that it would be a desirable thing to have it working in Tool Manager IQ to and have some kind of interaction between the two systems. Yep.
Well, we can hold the fixturing there, but intermediate tooling, that's to come in the next version.
That's right. Yep. And you're right too about the training. When you add things, it's a little bit more than what I'm showing you here. You have to add these items to the library first. You tell it what the receptor and the fitting is. It's not a crazy process, but maybe I'll leave that for now because, yeah, it's more of a training thing for sure. But very useful. And we do have Tool Manager IQ coming up after all of the Gibbs stuff here, the standard stuff. So I'll show you bringing in a fixture and exporting as well. So the next one is about cutting at singularities. And the example I'm using here is a 5-axis mill, and it's got a C-axis table here. And so if you throw a toolpath on there, you could really cut that same toolpath at a number of C-axis angles. And so the current behavior is usually to just cut it as is, as the XY plane. But there's a lot of reasons why you may want to have that C-axis rotate and have it cutting the same feature, but having that feature maybe closer to you or out of the way of something. And so that's where they've added some options here. So this is the standard. I've told it not to rotate in this one, and I'm cutting that wall. So it's just cutting it as is. And I'll come back to that toolpath after. But inside the rotate tab, if you're using position, and I don't have the polar and cylindrical here since I have a offset, a part offset. But if you're in positional, then you could do automatic. So what I've done here is I have another CS. So this CS is 90 degrees to the XY plane. And by automatic, I'm telling it to use that CS as the angle instead. So it should rotate 90 degrees and then do that toolpath. So you can see it rotating here, and it may not, again, be on the center of the table. There may be quite a gap there, and a reason why you would want to come around or have that same feature over and over if it's repeated around the part.
That's a great functionality, even on some tables where you only can get to it from one side.
Yep, that's it. And if you don't want to use the CS, you can use a angle yourself as well. And there's even a way to add it into the MDD. The example I saw was by quadrants. So that would give you a little pull down menu, and anything that was in that machine definition document would be selectable. So you may not have to figure out what it is. You can see at 45 degrees. So this will come up in different kinematics depending on what your machine can do. But yeah, definitely another one that's come up before in the past.
Yeah, it'll also save users from going into machine parameters to do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
But now they can do it inside of Gibbs and visualize it.
That's it. Yep. Yeah, I believe there was some works in the post that I've seen too, or the MDD, that you could make it do that. But yeah, I don't know that the behavior was selectable. Could be wrong, but yeah, either way, really good addition. And then the second thing in this one is a separate one, but it's just that the coordinate system gets saved now if you save a process. So this hinges on you bringing it into the same MDD. But if I have this guy here, and you can see I have my plane here selected, I'm just going to load a process that I've saved that's doing the front pocket here. And that's on a front CS. So as soon as I load that in here, it's going to load in, and you can see it swapped to front here. In the process itself, it'll be on the front coordinate system. So one of those little ones, but again, one that I've seen, come up, and they always come up in the XY plane, it seems. Useful for the lathe side as well, especially main versus sub. So just carries it with the process. Loading and everything is the same. hopefully making decent time. Oh, that's the CS ones.
Oh, you're doing great. How many more features we got?
We have 20, I think, in all, and we're at 12. So
Good.
the end ones are a little more maybe speaking going on, but yeah, we'll be good.
Excellent.
So this next one is a new probing process they've added. So anyone with probing, anyone that didn't know about the probing, Gibbs does offer a probing module where you can create probe tools and create probing processes. And in this case, they've added, because there are some in there already, there's a basic one that just executes some code you put in it. And then there's one that will pick up the stock corners and one that will pick up shapes, basic 2D shapes for either setting your work fixture offset or checking the dimension and possibly recutting or stopping the machine if it's out and can't be fixed. So they've added a similar thing here for the rotary axis. And this guy, all of them are 2D. So you can use a shape in this case, a circle, a point, very similar to the other ones if you use them. And it's just going to pick up what angle this is on. So in my example, I was imagining maybe a second op. Maybe you got a 3-axis machine, cut one shape here, and then there's some features that have to be related to it. Then you could pick that up to set it, set your plane. Or you could have it check. You could cut. The go-to is also available in here. So if it's out a certain amount of degrees, then it'll either alarm, or you can set up a different operation called a go-to op that would exist before the cutting happened to create a loop. So it would loop, it would cut, check it. Is it good? No. Cut again, check it. If it's good, then it continues. So yeah, I mean, not much to say about that. Clearances, regular thing. You're telling it what kind of a offset, if you want to do the V instead of the H, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Of course, in this particular case, you'd have to have not only the option, but the post processor to support it.
that's true. That's a good point. Absolutely need that that update for this. There are a few others maybe that I've been through already that that could be said for too. Maybe not yet though. But yes, many of these guys will, or many additions, any addition that has to do with the posting usually has to be added. Which I'm not sure how it goes. I think some of them are added free of charge, but you may also have to pay depending on what it is. The next thing is just a couple new color modes they've added. So they're for visualizing either curvature or taper angles. And they're found in with the other color modes. So if I said curvature color, let's say, and you can see it's coming up with colors for different rads. And if it was some kind of crazy spline of some sort, it would be almost like a rainbow. And you can use this guy as well. You can come in here and edit the colors that you're getting and set it to.
It's funny you would pick a pocket camera for color.
Do you remember that model? This is an old school Gibbs one.
I was involved in that model. That's how old I am. People still had pocket cameras. It was an old Kodak.
That's a nice model. That's the one that you had to do the film yourself. Yeah.
Got it.
Looking good. Now looking even better, nice and colorful. And then there's one for a taper angle as well, very similar. And that model probably does the trick anyways, but here's another one that might also show well. So obviously it depends on the model. A good way to distinguish too some weird, because these guys are more constant rads, but when you end up with that rad that may be a little bit of rad inside of a rad, or it's a ellipse,
Well, it's handy if you have a part where you wonder if there's an undercut and you can't really tell. And it might be just a half a degree or something, but this is going to allow you to do that. It's not just for the colors. It's,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that a lot in the aircraft industry where everything has a little bit of undercut or, 5 degree here, 1 degree there, and kind of looks straight. So, yep. Looks pretty too, but yeah, definitely has a use. So the next couple, I don't know whether Wally would want to talk about them at all. I don't actually know if you'll be able to see this either. Let me just change this up here quick. So I don't have a post for the example, and it really is just code in the end anyways. But they've added a couple things to the post processor. And the first one is the configuration tab. And these are just examples, but this is something that the post developers can use to add different changeable functions. So you can see here the ARC format there has a pull down where you can choose either between the R and the IJK. So that kind of thing where you don't have to be set, you can have some kind of an option for yourself. And so I'm sure a lot more than this can be built in there. So yeah, if you have anything that you wanted to add, I'm not sure if they'll automatically start using that, but I'm guessing that'll come in handy because I'm not a post developer myself, but definitely seen a lot of the posts having to be changed from one to the other.
So those are
very handy thing for the user that
yeah, and the other one too, again, sorry, I'm just showing our faces here because I'm not showing my screen. In our test, I showed my whole screen and it was kind of, you could see what was going on behind the curtain, but maybe we'll change that up for the next one.
Now, Wally, does that require a new master for these posts, or would any post be able to be interactive to the user?
I'm pretty sure we can put it into any post, but it does require modifications.
Oh, hold on.
Okay. He's turning on the air conditioning.
Yeah, sorry, Wally. You can go ahead again.
Oh, okay. Like I was saying, I believe we can put it into any post, older or new, but it will require modification.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's the same with this new one as well, where you can choose to restrict certain work fixture offsets. If you have ones that you don't want to be using, you can tell it just to take them off the table altogether with this dialog here. And again, I assume that probably needs a post change.
This will require a newer master. We can't achieve this in a legacy post.
Fair enough.
But this type of display of the work fixture offsets won't be seen if you're using a legacy post anyways. So if your post is going to support it, you'll see it here. I believe if your post won't support it, you're not even going to see this in the dialog.
You would just see the standard, just the CSs with the numbers on the side,
That's
right?
correct. You would see the number, the list with the check boxes to turn them on and off, or to renumber them or to not.
Yes. Perfect. And sorry for the repeating, Wally, there. We had the audio turned off because of a looping issue. So I'll probably turn it off again and try to remember to turn it on before I ask you anything else. Thank you, Wally.
That's okay. I'm muting myself when I'm not talking anyways.
Sounds good. I'll mute on this side too. I think it was a loop with Al's there. Oops. just in case. All right, up next is the engraving. So they've added a new mode to the contour. And so if you go ahead and just create a contour, you'll end up having a engraving setting here. So offset contour will be just the standard contour that you always have, but engraving here, it is able to see, you have to use a big enough tool to go across. In this case, there are letters that I just made out of the text creation tool there. I've tried it with some imported ones too. I'm going to show you a raster to vector coming up here, but it will vary the depth as it goes to create the proper width of whatever the lettering that you have. And then for any kind of anything that it doesn't hit on the first pass, it'll come back and do little dive downs to cut those so that you end up with the exact same shape as the text itself. So probably easier to see it than for me to talk about it. But this guy here, I've just put it on that text there, and you can see it coming in. All it is a very basic process, just putting a depth. The depth can be more. It maxed out for me here. Spring passes and stock.
It's actually not that basic. It really is managing this really, really well. You've got to buy some expensive art packages to what this is doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great option for people who need to do that kind of thing.
Well, this reminds me of the one, the Pro Access, I believe, art package was one that did that, right? And I should rephrase it. Basic for you to put in, but I'm sure in the background it was a little bit of a chore for them to do. Especially, I had originally thought it was only on fonts that you could make out of that, the text creation tool, but seems to work on anything you draw. So yeah, really looks good. The customer we were dealing with a lot of this was doing woodworking, I believe guitars and such, engraving.
Yeah, some people called it the sharp point font ability.
Sorry?
Sharp point font.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't heard that term before, but yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. Well, it works great.
Yeah, and I was looking through some different fonts. It will do like all of them. I had some weird Chilla one or something, Chiller. Looked kind of droopy, almost like a Halloween font. It did have a lot of extra after the fact kind of plunges to make all the little, little pieces of it because it was just not straight at all, but turned out perfect. So yeah, definitely it's doing what it was supposed to. So looking good. And again, all you have to do is just set this up and pick the font, and away you go.
Is that something you're going to show now?
Yeah, I was going to actually. Good timing. I believe it is the next up. And I just have an example here. So
now, raster to vector, just so you know or don't know, it's a plugin available from us, and it's a really inexpensive. I mean, $750, I believe. But it allows you to bring in any picture, JPEG or bitmap, and it'll create it into geometry. And once it's in geometry, you can scale it, you can rotate it, you can do what you want with it. But it's a brilliant tool to be able to place graphics on a part as necessary. Recycling logos, all kinds of different things that people ask for. And we've been very successful with it, but a lot of people don't know it exists.
That said, hopefully a few more will after this. I'll show you in the newer version. So we did make it totally integrated with its own command plugin or command icon here. So that can be moved anywhere you want. We do still have the legacy version as well if you're using older GibbsCAMs without the newer interface. But you would run that there. I believe Al taught me to do this as well. It's kind of cool. If you put a bigger stock so you can kind of see it scan in. That's why I've made it a certain size here. I'm just going to bring in this actually. So you can see what it's doing here, and you'll see it in real time when I bring in that photo there. So I have a logo here. Like Al said, I believe it's JPEG, BMP, and SVG. And it works on the contrast. So if you have a logo and it's black on white, then it's gonna look great. And we have a lot of people that have done pictures for engravings as well. So I'm just gonna load that in. It'll start importing, and you'll see it actually draw in here. And like Al said, it's using GibbsCAM geometry. So this particular one, and that's nice and quick, imports complete. This particular photo here, it had a little bit of feathering. So it did pick up, some things on the inside, but all you have to do is just go in there, get rid of what you don't want if you don't want it.
Yeah, what's important about this is contrast is one thing. The other thing is
Resolution.
how large the file is. If you have a resolution, and we have the old GibbsCAM poster with the Victory motorcycle, and we brought in 2 different resolutions. Obviously, it'll take longer with the larger resolution, but you get a lot more detail. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get just a logo, or you're trying to get a picture, you can create it in different ways. We even had a customer use it to in the funeral industry to actually take in a fingerprint of the loved one and a signature, and they were able to bring in and machine that onto a plaque, and that's what they used it for. But we have all kinds of custom bike shops and other things that use it for other aspects. But a really instant tool. You don't have to get Adobe or something else to go raster to vector. It just works right inside of Gibbs, and you can get what you want.
Yeah, I missed that fingerprint one. That does sound really cool. That's for sure. I always like that dog that one of our customers made too. That one turned out really well. The hair just looked, it was popping. So yeah, raster to vector. You can find the download on our website. You can get in touch with us, and then all you need is a code, and away you go. With all the pricing details that Al already gave. And of course, scale, modify, throw some tool paths on it. I mean, it's just regular GibbsCAM geometry. So the next one that I'm going to show, that is going to be, this may actually be a little bit of a behind the curtain thing, but I'm going to present this browser here. Let's try this. So it's CoroPlus. So I wasn't sure if Todd wanted to do this part or not, so I came with it ready to go. And CoroPlus is from Sandvik. At the moment, we're in the Mississauga Sandvik office, so it's fitting to show this here, and it's a great tool. So when you create some kind of tooling assembly, so CoroPlus is made to bring in tooling into a number of different CAM systems. I'm not sure exactly how many right now, but definitely GibbsCAM. And so it has a CoroPlus website here that you go to, and you have an account. I'm not sure on the pricing details or anything, but you would be able to come in here and create assemblies. So you can see I've created some assemblies here, and you would go in and be able to search through the catalog of tools. And I believe there's plans to, have other brands possibly even. I don't want to say anything inappropriate, Todd, but I believe that you're just looking to, stock this up. Obviously, you want people to be able to find anything that they want.
I think the initial catalog, just so you're clear, contains all the Sandvik information, but users in coming versions will be able to create their own library in the cloud with whatever tools they have. So ideally, the integration into Gibbs allows you to bring in tools from Sandvik right into the Gibbs tool library. And then, of course, obviously into Tool Manager IQ. But down the road, they'll allow for other tools to come in as well.
Yes. Yes, and I like how you mentioned the integration too, where it's not technically integrated right now, maybe in the future, but yeah, in the end, it ends up being a tool inside of GibbsCAM. So if you're using something like Tool Manager IQ, I'll show you how that works on the Gibbs end. But here you would be able to search through and create the assembly, and you could see the specs on the assembly, and you create whatever you need, all your whole library, put it together as you go. And then on the GibbsCAM side, in the plugins menu, which again, I'll do a little swap over here.
The cutting speeds are working. I've confirmed it just now.
Okay, Todd says the cutting speeds are working and he confirmed it, so perfect. Is that a direct import you mean into Gibbs, or?
From CoroPlus to library from the plugin. Straight in, it is working.
Nice.
In 24.0.48, brand new one.
Okay, so they must have just added that, I'm guessing. So that's perfect. I mean, that's just seamless all the way in. I'll open up CoroPlus one here. Not sure what exactly that error was about, but it looks good. But yeah, you would be able to sign on to CoroPlus tool library here in the plugins menu. And that's where you would see all of your tools that you've put. You can also download them as solids, I believe, right off the CoroPlus website if that's what you're looking for. But if you sign on, this goes right into that same library there, and you can see the tools I was seeing on that end as well. And then you just import them into Gibbs. And I did bring in a insert and a holder here to kind of transition as well into the Tool Manager IQ side of things. Is there anything that you'd like me to say or like to say about CoroPlus that, that I haven't? I felt, the pressure. I know that you did this last rollout and I didn't want to put that on you again. So I think it was a little last minute. It comes in and obviously you end up with a Gibbs tool and it's using all the regular Gibbs functions as far as this one's in a form insert, 3D form, and then a custom holder based on the solid. And so that's ready to go right away, can be saved. And that's where I'll transition to Tool Manager IQ. I'll show you some more about it after as well. But we do have our own software here, Tool Manager IQ, that you can see the command icon here.
Well, maybe Brandon, just before you do that, I mean, the idea, obviously, the CoroPlus is, I don't know, it's something around $500 a year to subscribe. And you do that directly with Sandvik. But because the plugin is right inside of Gibbs, it saves you from having to go to a website to pick up the tools or find the tools. It's all there. It gives you a quick search. So there are advantages to that. You remember the old days where we had the bookcase behind us with 40 pounds worth of books. I don't know. Most of our customers are old enough to remember that. But we used to have a whole bunch of them. So now this is held in one place. You can bring down the tool and have it handy inside of Gibbs, which now I guess your transition is, hey, if you found the tools you need, whatever library you got it from, now you can save them in Tool Manager IQ for your own management.
That's right, which Tool Manager IQ, in case you didn't know, it is a database. It's a shared database on a SQL server. It's not cloud-based. And it has a standalone application as well for anyone that doesn't have GibbsCAM. But it looks very much like the one inside of GibbsCAM that's integrated. And the one in GibbsCAM here that I have, obviously, if it's in GibbsCAM and it can do direct import and export of any kind of tool. I believe they're just adding possibly or waiting for the Gibbs side on one of the tools. But yeah, you can bring those in. You can do the holders as well. You can do the fixtures. And it does run inside of GibbsCAM 2024 now, of course, as you can see. So I'll give you an idea of how it works. And then I'll show you our new AI named Fritz, which is the main attraction here in this new version, I'd say. So yeah, maybe I'll just show you Fritz now because he is the guy. Let's be honest, this guy's the celeb. So yeah, and then I'll show you how everything works here. But Fritz is an AI assistant, if you'd say, and
Yeah, the idea behind Fritz, and I'll let you drive there, Brandon. Hopefully everybody can see that dialogue. I don't see it on this screen for some reason. That's interesting.
maybe thinks of it as a different application. I can share the whole screen if we need.
Yeah, I don't see it on there. That's interesting. When you clicked on Fritz, and we see it on there, but I don't see it. Oh, what happened? Did that dialogue appear, Wally?
No, I think our streaming
Oh, there it is.
There
There it is. Yeah, that was weird.
I think it considers it not part of the Gibbs application or something like that as far as sharing.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll just share everything here.
There you go. So
Thank you for letting me
the
know.
idea now is that once you bring up Fritz, it's like having a digital assistant. So Tool Manager IQ, of course, will manage your tools and your fixtures, have them all in one place. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 users, or even just yourself, you want to know what tools are where. And if you're connected with Cribwise, you'll also have a connection to know what the quantity of those tools are. So, if you had a 1/2-inch cutter and you had 5 machines that needed 1/2-inch cutters, you wanted to know how many you had. Well, now you have an ability to manage that. Or if you have a whole bunch of 1/2-inch cutters, but you need a certain grade or whatever, you can go into the tool manager to look at that. But maybe you don't know what grade to use for cutting Inconel or some materials. Now we effectively have the AI built in. So you can ask Fritz, hey, I'm cutting Inconel. I'd like to use a 1/2-inch cutter. What grade of carbide should I be using? Or, I have a 1/4-20 hole. What's the drill tap size I need to make? Anything like that, you can now ask the AI and it will come back with feedback for you. So you don't have to leave your office. You don't have to leave the browser. You're right inside of Gibbs, and you can start asking questions to the system about, maybe what kind of vise. I need a jaw opening of 6 inches. What do you recommend? So there's all kinds of cool things that you can use having Fritz with you, and it's part of the system. So you get him for free. And we've got lots of plans and for what's coming, but this is the first introduction in version 3, and we'll be releasing our next version next year with all kinds of cool stuff. And I'll let Wally talk to that a little bit. But what have you typed in here, Brandon?
I asked exactly what you had asked there, and it came back with an answer. And if it's one question, then you can ask the question. If you ask follow-up questions, then it will, see the last question and factor that in. Or you can always say new conversation to reset it. So yeah, if it's just one and done, great. And if you have a little conversation you want to have with Fritz, then that's fine too. But I suppose the answer is you could ask any question you want. I mean, obviously it would probably be machining related, but you could ask about the weather if you wanted to. I mean, it applies to
Well,
be
you
your
could use it
assistant so
also
that you don't have to
for,
go hunting for things.
yeah, and if you need to set up a setup sheet and there were certain terminologies or phraseologies you needed to have for it, you could go ahead and ask. You can ask specific questions. Effectively, it's like ChatGPT. You can use it very similarly, but right inside of the package. So later on, at the moment, it's part of Tool Manager IQ. We may go into a subscription model for Fritz down the road, but at the moment, it's there. You can use it. and you can copy and paste. So if you wanted to know the feeds and speed for a specific tool, you can copy and paste that into your process. So it's a real handy tool.
Absolutely. And I think the next iteration will have a feeds and speeds as well that is automatically populated, where Fritz is asked a specific question. So you just press a button and just give it a couple of different things that you want to, just a couple factors, whatever, material and this and that, and then comes back with the feeds and speeds. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to build on this that could be very useful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, ladies, you want to chime in?
Yeah, in the new interface that we're working on for 2024, or I guess it'll be 2025, what it's called when Gibbs releases 2025. We have an entirely new interface that looks and feels a lot like you're actually still in Gibbs when you're accessing things in Tool Manager, and but we're additionally adding into that that the system will automatically know the size of tool that you're working with, the material you're working with, and so if you're asking about feeds and speeds from Fritz, that stuff will be pre-populated and makes it very simple to click and go to get your information.
Yeah, and there's a lot more, but won't give away all the secrets. But certainly that is going to be a really cool, and we'll keep you up to date as new intermediate versions come out.
So now that you've all gotten to know Fritz, I'll give you a little tour of the software as is right now. So this is the current version 3.0. Was just released with 2024 or GibbsCAM 2024. So obviously does work inside of it. And again, there's a standalone version. So not everyone has GibbsCAM. You may have someone that wants to be on this database, and I'll just show you a list here in the tools section, let's say. So it's all about keeping all of your tools, your holders and fixtures in one place. And when one person changes it, that reflects everywhere. So anyone that's connected to that database would be able to see those changes. So on one end, you may have possibly a programmer, that's doing everything himself, and he may be adding just from the integrated version. But then down the line, maybe there is someone doing the tool purchasing. So they may need to know or need to be adding supplier information. There's also the tool crib employee that possibly has a standalone that is ordering the tools. Maybe the programmer just tells him what he needs, and he does the research and starts adding them into the database. So you can have an installation with or without Gibbs. And the only thing that you're missing out on is the importing and exporting directly, of course, because there's no GibbsCAM to import and export directly from. So the example I'll use from this file is going to be that Sandvik tool that we brought in. So if I want to add that maybe to this guy, maybe to an offline, that's come up where maybe because of different standards, ITAR and stuff like that, you're not allowed to have any kind of internet connectivity. Someone on one station may add to the database on a safe station, and then someone that's not on the net can then use those tools as well. And in that case, you would just either add manually, which I don't feel comes up too much. But if you select it in Gibbs and say import to Gibbs or from GibbsCAM, sorry, then that will start the import process. And there's quite a few things that you can add on top of this, but it does pre-populate all of the different fields. You can also change the picture if you'd like. You can identify it as a standard tool in your library, let's say, so it's always on hand. Don't have to have a long lead time if you got to order it. You can also add them to a group, which I'll show you in the other file. So that Could be done, again, on the tool crib employee side, maybe by job. Maybe they find all the tools that you've asked for, and now they add it all into a job group. And then the programmer just needs to pick that group and where he goes with the tools.
Think of it like a playlist.
Like
So
a playlist,
effectively,
absolutely.
you may have all your tools in there, but now you can create your own playlist specific. So it's not duplicating, it's not taking more database location, just saying, hey, this is my playlist for the tools I want to use for a machine or material or job.
That's it. That's it. It could be anything you want to name it. So definitely heard by machine, possibly standard tooling that can't go in certain machines. So you could just make the group so you don't get confused. By material is exactly anything you need there. And I'll show you more on that in a second. Also supplier information, which of course has got to be Sandvik in this case. I would say always. But you can add item numbers. You can generate barcodes that you can print. You can use scanners on them. But all those details are really important when it comes time to order that tool again. You'll know exactly where to get it from, what tool it was, who your contact was, et cetera, et cetera. So possibly not for the programmer, but for a purchaser of some sort even. So whoever's adding this or taking away from it could be anyone on the database. And those suppliers also, the more information, you can add them in the supplier section. So I'm just going to press OK to this. It's going to bring in the holder. It's going to bring in the tool. And now those would be in the tools in the holders section. But since I've added them together, they are an assembly. So if I load the tool out of the tools section, then it will automatically load that holder. But you do have a holder section that you can treat them separately. So you can have a tool loaded and then select the tool and export the holder onto it if you do a lot of swapping. And you can add holder classes as well.
I think the value really comes, and Brandon, you can continue to run your screen as you're going, but basically the value is running inside of Gibbs. You may have hundreds, if not thousands of processes, or already hundreds of tools. And rather than two users creating the same tool because they have two sessions running, or opening an old version of Gibbs or a session of Gibbs, copy and paste tools, you can now basically select the tools that you've already created, bring them into the library so everybody has access to them. So you never have to create tools twice, and they're all in one spot. So if you've got Gibbs for a long time, bringing in those tools straight into the library is the fastest, easiest way to populate your library, and there's nothing else on the market like it. And again, because it's on your workstation or on your server, it's not cloud-based, so you don't have to worry about, is the internet up? You don't have to worry about that. So the other great tool beyond bringing in all of those tools from Gibbs directly into the library and using them throughout your Gibbs instances is fixtures. So one guy may have downloaded a bunch of clamps or vices or that type of thing, but you don't have access to it because you don't have access to his particular workstation. But now you'll have the database. You can go to fixtures, grab the same fixtures that have been used before. You'll have the location on spot, bring it in, and it'll come in exactly to where you wanted it, much like you saw in intermediate tools, but you have access to fixture. And later we'll do the intermediate tools as well. I know I'm speaking quickly, but ultimately it's a tool to help you become more productive because you don't have to hunt for where the tools are. They're right in here, and everybody working with you will have the same place to get them. And if you want more info on this, you can certainly go to toolmanagerq.com, and on that website you'll be able to see training and demos. It's really easy to use. So I think, Brandon, that covers tooling. We've got CoroPlus, CribWise, which we'll be able to, if you have CribWise, we'll be able to manage inventory. So if you now look for a particular tool, it'll feed back to us through the API that there are 15 of these in your tool crib. or whatever that might be. So GibbsCAM 2024 has really focused on tools, and it's going to continue to do so, and allow new users and existing users to become productive with the new tools that are being used in industry today. What really should be the P's and P's on my brand new XYZ machine? It's got all of these new functionalities, high-speed spindles, more coolant. How should I use that tool? And now with Fritz and with the system, you'll be able to utilize that. And of course, with Sam, it's backing, and the tool background I have. That's why we're focusing on this right now. What do you got next, Brandon?
I think you're on next with CSI Flex. Let me bring up the PowerPoint here.
I think this is our last set of slides.
It is.
We're programmed to go to 11, but I think we're making good time. I'm looking forward to my French pastry.
This looks good. With the questions, I think we'll be close. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I have my own monitoring system. Says I'm hungry, Al. Anyway, so here we have CSI Flex. This is another fantastic tool for users of GibbsCAM. Obviously, you're running a shop, and being able to know what's happening in the shop, communicating with what's happening on the shop floor is imperative. And if, of course, you get feedback, it lets you know that you're using things wisely. So effectively, as you see in this slide, you've got your programming system, you've got some integration with CSI Flex, and potentially on legacy machines with eNet, you can now hook up to a serial port machine, Ethernet machine, an FTP type machine, any machine. In fact, even manual processes can get fed back to the system, so you know what's happening in the shop. Yeah, we can pop the next slide. Right, so the idea on this particular slide is the same idea. So on legacy machines, T-Connect, FANUC, Focus, whatever the protocol you've got on the shop floor, we're able to integrate into it and allow you to connect to your server. Again, it's not cloud-based. It can be localized for your shop. You don't want to be necessarily sharing all that data with the world. It's all on your server, and how you'll be able to get the reports and data that you need. So again, leveraging that information. Why is this machine faster than the other machine? Or, how come this operator can set up this machine that much faster? Maybe it's because he's got a crane above him. There are realities that you're not aware of until you start getting information. So dashboards are really your portal to the reality that your shop is having. So you can customize dashboards. You can have exactly dashboards that live shop floor on big TVs or panels, so that when you have visitors walking through, they can see how great you guys are doing. Or even your guys, everybody performs better when there's a scoreboard. So it's kind of interesting to have those visible values used to the presented to the user. Right. So then, of course, the natural progression on machine monitoring is, what do you want to know? Do you want to know just when the machine is on and off? Do you want to know when specific processes are being put in place, when you're probing, when you're not probing, or even just specifically, is a roughing tool taking too long? Is a machine? You can get granular with all of this information. So all the metrics are available to you, including, even pressure and temperature. And we have customers who, find it very important. They may have one particular customer, I think, has hydraulic fixturing. And when hydraulics occasionally start to fail, parts fall right out of the machine. Not a good thing. So we're able to get that kind of feedback real time through our systems. And of course, why aren't the machines running? Hey, I thought the machines were running. You can be on another part of the plant and have a look and see what's on the job. So this is explain what the real reasons are for specific situations. Maybe that one machine is always on maintenance for some reason. It's got a bad spindle and nobody's really reporting it. They're just not running it. So the kind of information you want to get. So who and how. So again, once you have that kind of information, you can drill down and figure out, is it a shift scenario, machine running perfectly fine in the morning, but somehow at night shift it seems to have some issues. Whatever the case might be, you start to drill down to the real reasons why things are. Maybe there's just no material and you don't have the material at the machine, so the guys can't run it. So there's a lot of great reasons to have something like this on. Now, this whole idea about questions, I'm not sure we're getting any feedback on YouTube, but certainly you guys can reach out to us by email or chat on the YouTube chat anytime, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the weeks. And I think that kind of wrapped it up, Brandon. We've got GibbsCAM 2024. I'm not sure if we handle every single feature, but we handle all the hot ones, did we not?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything that's, notable. I guess there's a lot of obviously bug fixes and tweaks here and there. There were some 5-axis additions. But yeah, we ran pretty much the whole gambit. And I'm looking at some comments here. Hey, great job, Brandon. I'll take that. Thanks, Steph. I don't know if there is a question here. Can you ask Fritz speed and feed where Fritz taking the information from? Go ahead.
Yeah, I did.
You want Wally to answer it all? I can unmute there.
Yeah, I did reply to that in the feed. That in the next full release, we will have that. It's part of the tool dialog in Tool Manager to be able to ask that with the tool parameters automatically being entered directly within Tool Manager.
In some testing, we have actually been able to say specifically for this Sandvik tool, what are the feeds and speeds I should be running? And it came back with really good data. And the same would be true with other tool suppliers. Same thing if you said, I have a high-speed spindle, it's at 40,000 RPM spindle, what do you recommend? It comes back with some real good recommendations. So in that particular case, obviously we need access to the internet for Fritz. And as you say, down the road, all of that stuff will be built in. We'll be able to just populate feeds and speeds inside of Tool Manager IQ. And, what do they say? Bob's your uncle. So, or Fritz is your uncle. We'll be able to manage that. All right. Any other questions?
Not that I've seen. It's true. Wally has been answering them as they go, and it looks like a lot of Tool Manager IQ questions. So that's good. Nothing of note that I can see outstanding. Other than there may have been a couple things like those pop-ups that didn't show. So we'll have to do the entire screen. I thought that might have been a bad play because of everything you can see, but we'll have to remember that for next time. Hopefully there wasn't too much missing, but yeah, just sounds like a couple things that I think were part of the GibbsCAM, yeah.
Not a problem. For all of you who are joining us live, thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it. For those of you who join us later, look forward to your comments as well. We appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as Stephanie would say, our CAM Solutions channel. We appreciate it very much. And thank you, Sandvik Canada, for allowing us to be at your facility. We'll be signing off.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Bye-bye.